Hello and welcome to episode 9 of this week's podcast, Long Shots. Hello, Sharad, how are you?
I'm very good, and it's good to be here for the 9th week running.
Yes, and you must be very happy yesterday.
Why is that?
We jumped on a certain set of rankings. You know how that really kicks off everyone in India.
Oh, yeah, ease of doing business.
Yes.
Where are we now at? High 70s?
77, my friend.
And that's an improvement from what?
I think of 23 positions, 22 positions from 100. Yeah, from
Okay.
100. That was the position last year.
But I'm guessing there's a lot of little intricacies involved in what metrics they use to gauge such things. And are we better across the board, or have we actually gone worse on a few parameters?
That's a great question. If you actually look at the criteria which World Bank uses, the 77 position is a cumulative ranking. It takes into account many different factors on which they individually rank, and I'm guessing there must be some sort of a weightage to each criteria, and then they add up and come up with the 77 rank. The individual criteria are things like dealing with construction permits, trading across borders, starting a business, getting credit, electricity, enforcement of contracts, minority shareholder protection, insolvency, etc. So, last year I remember when the position went up, paying taxes was a big driver behind that, courtesy GST. But this year, strangely, we are 2 positions down.
That's pretty interesting, because one of the things that has been a key go-to force by the current government is sort of streamline the taxation and streamline, improve the paying dynamic of taxes amongst the Indian citizen population.
Correct.
So it seems a little ironic, doesn't it?
I guess because last year the framework was introduced, so that entire policy itself led to a ranking spike.
Yeah.
But this year has been, there's been 1 year of implementation.
True.
And that's why I think the progress has been incrementally lower.
Yeah.
So, the biggest jump in terms of positive position has been with dealing with construction permits.
Okay.
I don't think it really affects us, does it?
Unless we try to build a big, massive office for ourselves.
Yes, that's not happening anytime soon. Anyway, so, I think it kind of, if you look at the breakdown, the 4 areas where the position has gone down is paying taxes, protecting minority investors, resolving insolvency. That was a surprise because I thought, obviously, like GST, IBC has now been in place for a longer period than GST actually.
Yeah.
So I would have imagined that there would be some incremental improvement there, but there isn't. And then registration of property. Mm-hmm. So I think if you look at the economic environment presently, where NBFCs are under stress, banking sector is suffering NPAs, a lot of bankruptcy and insolvency proceedings are going on. IL&FS.
IL&FS, yes, man. IL&FS. I think, was it 2 weeks back? I gave you the unofficial title of in-house IL&FS expertise.
Yes,
because you've been tracking it very closely. And of course, there was some noise yesterday in terms of a plan or lack of plan or a plan to a plan or whatever, however, which way you want to categorize it.
Yeah.
But a meaningful day yesterday, because there was an October 31st deadline. What was the deadline for? And are we seeing anything concrete? It's a big ship to turn. Is it turning? Is the question, I guess, right?
Yeah. So a lot of moving pieces there, and in IL&FS, I think last we kind of touched upon this topic. They had already appointed a new board under Uday Kotak, and the board was supposed to then come up with a resolution plan. So they hired the financial and restructuring advisors, and they were given the deadline of 31st October to present a resolution plan.
Yeah.
And that they did. Okay, let's just say they submitted a plan. And it's probably as you very well put earlier, it's a plan for a plan.
Is it a Halloween horror plan?
I mean, the problem is that it's more like a primer on how to do a resolution rather than actually tell the world what they're going to do in case of IL&FS. First things first, the name of the report which has been submitted is Report on Progress and Way Forward. So it has a very nice rainbow-like zing to it. And in the document, I don't have access to the document. I was trying very hard to find it. It's apparently been filed with BSC and also with the NCLT. Couldn't find it on their websites.
Okay.
But there's an interesting press release which IL&FS has uploaded, in which it says that there are basically 3 types of resolution. They can be a group level resolution, a business vertical level resolution, and an asset level resolution. So what have you learned today, Sharad?
That there are three different ways to resolving it without actually knowing which is the preferred method.
Exactly. So the end note of that press release has been that the new board will recognize the merits and the demerits of each of these paths and will examine them further in the coming weeks and then come up with the approach that they're going to take for IL&FS. And they have given themselves a rather ambitious time frame of 6 to 9 months to come up with a plan and execute it end to end.
Oh, it includes execution as well?
Yes, it does. So the next year's ease of doing business rankings should really spike.
At least in the metric of resolving insolvency.
Yes, it should. Hopefully. I mean, I think that's what IL&FS new board is assuming when it's giving a 6 to 9 month deadline.
Yeah. I think currently after this new ranking, we're at what? 108 now. Yeah, so a lot of scope for improvement in our ranking of resolving insolvency.
Right. Absolutely. So let's see. And fingers are crossed.
Yeah, lots happening. And I think yesterday was, last week has been interesting on another front, sort of RBI and the government battling each other out. But you know what? Before we actually do a deeper dive on it, I really want to, I'm sure you read it, but I really want to read out the quote from our deputy RBI governor, Viral Acharya, in I think it was a conference in Mumbai. And he made this statement, which I think is, it's got like Hollywood written all over it, man. Governments that do not respect central bank independence will sooner or later incur the wrath of financial markets, ignite economic fire, and come to the rue the day they undermine an important regulatory institution.
Whoa, background music, man. Background music.
Yeah, this requires background music, but it's got Hollywood written all over it, man. Like it's also
way too dramatic.
It's way too dramatic, but it also gives you a pretty good idea into what he's trying to say is on, preserving the sanctity or independence of the RBI and completely disconnected from the government. And this has become a topic of question now with, noise around Article 7 being invoked and things like that. But it's very interesting because it's such an important tool, monetary policy. And once you get intrusion from, let's call it government forces or politically driven forces, it can meaningfully sway the direction of the economy.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around it? And, in the context of Article 7 and in the context of historical elements of intrusion, if you will, for lack of a better word. But what are your thoughts?
But first things first, I think central bank sparring with the government, it's not something very India specific. That happens pretty much all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, the governments would always want central banks to, keep interest rates low, whereas the central bank would always be, monitoring inflation. So they have a different set of priorities. So that obviously, I mean, obviously President Trump keeps on tweeting every second day against the Federal Reserve governor. So yeah, first things first, this is not something very, very unique to the Indian situation. Second thing is, I think the approach of RBI, I kind of see it pretty much going full circle in the last 2.5 years. Because I recall, like right now in the last 2-3 months, there's been a lot of pushback from RBI. There's been a lot of, I would say, symbols of assertion which have been thrown out. But in 2.5 years ago, come November 16, when demonetization happened, which was a very dramatic decision taken by the government, the RBI went along with them. And, you come back, then last 3 months, if you see RBI did against expectation interest rate hold, it pretty much rejected the government's view with regard to data localization. It wrote a dissent note saying that RBI should remain as the regulator for payments companies.
Yeah.
Like a dissent note which is actually available on RBI website.
Yeah.
Then Dr. Acharya's speech on last Friday. And I think this latest sparring is pretty much a function of the fact that ever since IL&FS, again we'll go back there, ever since IL&FS kind of imploded, and we have spoken about this a lot earlier, that the NBFC space is facing a liquidity crunch, right? And the banking system in general is fairly reluctant to underwrite. And the government in this situation is basically telling RBI that, okay, you need to relax your restrictions on distressed banks, especially which come under RBI's prompt corrective action framework.
Yeah.
And RBI is saying, no, we are not going to, everyone was way too relaxed for years. That's why we are in this problem. So we will not bite this bullet now.
Yeah.
So let the lending restrictions be, and that's why the recent to and fro has been happening.
Yeah, and in that context, let's, I guess, just talk briefly on, at a very high level, what this Article 7 means, because it does not have a precedent in the country, right?
Yeah, so Article 7, Section 7. Yeah, Section 7
sorry.
is basically part of the RBI Act. And Section 7 is basically a provision which can be invoked by the government if it wants to, quote unquote, instruct the central bank to basically agree with them. So it's a provision through which government can bypass the RBI's official view. Right?
Yeah.
And you're right. Never been invoked before. And it actually wasn't invoked even in the last couple of days.
Yes, correct.
I think the only thing that happened was that there were a couple of letters which were sent from the government to RBI, with regard to dividend transfers, with regard to stress power assets, with regard to PCA lending norms to be relaxed, in which there was a reference given to Section 7 without officially invoking it. So it was basically like government was just like saying that, look, if we want, we can do this.
Yeah.
So, you better toe the line. And but that was all pretty much behind the scenes. But then I think in this case, the RBI then went out of its way to make it public knowledge and, to display all these, to make all these dramatic gestures like invoking the wrath of financial markets through Dr. Acharya's speech.
Yeah, and with the Section 7, it says government can intervene, quote unquote, in the public interest.
Correct.
I often find such words very amusing because, I get it, and let's give them, whoever it is, give them credit, like they are thinking in the public interest, but I often doubt the ability to execute on that thought.
I mean, that's for I think that's typical legal approach, right? I mean, it's just to give a disclaimer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like, right to information, national security, can't disclose that. So I mean, all those kind of norms. I mean, I think government would always like to keep these provisions so that they can crack the whip when they have to.
Yeah. Should be fairly intriguing to track this and how this unfolds, because if this sort of gains more traction, this is just my personal view, but I'm just worried that it sets a precedent and subsequent usage becomes so much easier, because now all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's been done here, it's been done there.
Yeah.
And that's what is probably the key downside in terms of when is it absolutely necessary and when it is not. Like, it's such a subjective and qualitative discussion.
Yeah, I hope that Section 7 is officially never invoked, because as you said, it just sets a bad precedent.
Exactly, yeah.
I think and probably between the government and between the highest level of the government and the central bank, there are many channels available where you can communicate your grievances or go to and fro, right? And I really don't think that they have to invoke this provision officially. And if you look at the mood, if you look at the press coverage today morning, you can see things are already calming down a bit.
Yeah.
So I think this was mainly a kind of a verbal duel, just to kind of make it clear that let's be respectful to each other.
Yeah.
Rather than use all these provisions even in references. And that's what it has kind of come down to. Quite dramatic, obviously, and probably it has some linkage also to the changed perception of the government's electoral fortunes in 2019. Because I think 2 years back, probably they were in a much more robust honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
At that time, nobody was really questioning the government a lot. But obviously now 2019 is coming. The year before elections, the entire government's machinery kind of is waiting for that event to happen. So everybody's kind of flexing their muscles in that background, I think.
Yeah, and this sort of ties up well with something we discussed about last week on there is an incentive out there for short-term decision making,
right?
Politically driven.
Correct.
So it sort of not that we're commenting on what is right or wrong, but there obviously is an overhang.
Actually, I think this was also referenced in Dr. Acharya's speech when he compared the government to a T20 player and compared the RBI to a test match player.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether right now who's playing a test match or who's playing T20. Seems like roles often switch.
Yeah.
So but that kind of puts it on the line.
Yeah. This was a pretty intense and heavy India-specific discussion from IL&FS to RBI to the government.
And we're always intense.
We are always intense. That's true as well. But I think we can talk a little bit about. You were reading about it. I was reading about it. on, let's call it a Chinese internet tech sleeping giant in ByteDance.
Right.
And they're making...
That's now that just got funded, right? Now it's valued at $75 billion.
Yeah, that's correct. So it essentially what that does is it makes it the world's biggest privately backed startup.
So bigger than Uber now.
Bigger than Uber, correct. I think marginally bigger.
Right.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
So ByteDance, what exactly what do they do?
It's a Chinese internet tech company.
Right.
And what is somewhat unique to them is their machine learning and AI backed engine, which essentially gauges or customizes content based on physical interaction of the user with the screen, which is basically number of swipes, number of amount of time read to read something or consume a content, touch, pause, rewind. So basically all those data points are being...
Behavioral data points.
Exactly.
Rather than actually taking inputs.
Exactly.
Right.
Instead of taking social inputs.
Right.
So which makes it a little different, I guess, right? From the other guys, you were talking about Facebook as well, and it makes it a little different from those guys.
Right.
And it's the biggest privately backed startup now. And it's got a news reading app called TikTok, which is extremely popular outside of China.
Right.
And
so that TikTok is an English app.
It's the English app, and essentially it's a short form video content sharing app.
Right.
A lot of people anecdotally say that it's a cross between Google and Facebook.
Okay.
I mean, whatever that means, but so because of how the Chinese internet works, they obviously have two different versions of the app. TikTok is the global one, and they have a local Chinese one called Douyin.
Right.
Essentially the same product, but obviously the user base of TikTok cannot interact with the user base of Douyin.
Because of the Chinese firewall.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So it's very interesting to keep a track of this because it's very different from a lot of other Chinese players that have come up. It's not backed by the big two Chinese heavyweights of Tencent and Alibaba.
Right.
It's grown, by itself and made some tactful acquisitions.
Right. But do you sometimes feel that, I'm kind of noticing in case of Chinese internet startups, it's obviously differentiation might be one thing to play out. Like for instance, like WeChat is not really similar to WhatsApp, right? WeChat has a kind of series and, wide spread of services that it provides.
Correct,
yeah. But like this product that you just described, it does not really sound like from a user perspective, it does not really sound very different, like in terms of the basic proposition. Obviously the experience might be much more rich, or it might be much more customized, and the algorithms that they're using are different. But I often feel that the fact that in China the internet is like a closed environment, right? They really don't face the kind of competition from US products like an Indian app would say face.
I agree 100%. And it's a thought that I completely subscribe to. They've essentially grown in an environment where they've not had to compete with the incumbents. I mean,
and plus when you reach a particular level of scale, then
exactly.
You obviously are, you build a moat, you're protected then.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about sort of from a strategic angle, first mover advantage and switching costs and all these, which are, impediments for a business to grow. Right. They're immune to it. There is no first mover there, and there is no switching cost because there's no one else there.
Right.
So obviously they get benefit from it, but
But I guess VCs in this case would really be looking for the fact that they are customizing their offering using non-conventional techniques, which are really under the spotlight these days, with the GDPR rules, with the, rising regulation in the US, and a lot of wrath being faced by big tech.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think I cannot agree more. That's exactly it. It's a cleaner approach. I mean, that's what you said the other day, and we discussed about it on customizing content and customizing user experience is such a big play in media. And there's so many ways to do it. These guys are probably taking a cleaner approach of actually gauging behavior from a behavioral machine learning side, rather than actually getting social graph inputs and then, use that for targeted advertising or whatever it is. So definitely a different take on it. Let's see how that plays out. But so far so good. I mean, if you're the world's biggest privately backed startup now, then obviously you're getting some traction.
Right. And they must be getting decent bit of regulatory leeway as well, right? Because I often think the regulatory environment in tech is very interesting because it's always trying to catch up, and it will always be like 5 steps behind. I think a couple of days back, it was on your phone that message popped that there's a Bitcoin ATM now in Bangalore, right? And I think 2 days later, we read that the founders of that company have been arrested.
Yeah.
So, I think they were again kind of walking on a thin ice of regulatory vacuum, because I think in India, there's kind of a I would say, siloed view towards cryptocurrencies. RBI kind of there. I think RBI they definitely exerted its independence by saying that one fine day any financial institution dealing with a cryptocurrency startup is not permitted anymore, and that's what happened, right? So many businesses went down, and these guys were probably trying their hand to bypass this rule by creating a Bitcoin ATM.
Yeah.
And the cops came and took both of them away.
Yeah. You think that hurts innovation, right? In the long term?
Oh yeah, big time, And I remember like in when I was in the UK, there was this concept that I kind of familiarized myself with called the regulatory sandbox. And I think that's something which really, it's about time that we kind of put it in place in India as well, because it effectively means that the rules are fluid till your business model and your product model stabilizes. So it kind of gives that allowance to entrepreneurs that you don't have to worry about going on the wrong side of the law while you're innovating.
That's so interesting because it seems like a very small thing, but it has such a meaningful impact on innovation and motivation and incentives, right?
Absolutely. Wow, what a wide-ranging conversation, Sharad.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Started with regulator, it ended with regulator. Not bad, huh?
Yeah. Well, very controlled.
Very, very, very regulated conversation, I must say.
Yeah, no, but it's always a pleasure, and it was good to be here again, and look forward to next week.
Yes, so next week you have Diwali, and this week you have Halloween. In Delhi they are combining Halloween and Diwali quite a lot.
Yeah, let's not go
It's
down
called
that
Halloween.
road. Let's not go down that road.
Right. Awesome. All right. So yeah, just a quick reminder to all our listeners, we do stream on Apple Podcasts, so basically iTunes, Google Podcasts, Deezer, Spotify. And so do check out our podcast channel, Transmin Long Shots. Subscribe and like and comment. And if you don't like, do not comment. Thanks a lot. This is Nikhil.
And this is Sharath.
Signing off.